He will call you back. The moment you stop waiting for him, there's a painful truth that too many women are sitting with right now. Phone in hand, heart on the floor, waiting for a message that's taking way too long to come. You've checked your phone 100 times today. You've reread the last conversation. You've wondered what you did wrong. But here's what nobody told you. The waiting itself is the problem. Not because he's busy, not because he lost signal, but because the energy of desperation quietly tells a man everything he needs to know about how much power he holds over you. This is not about playing games. This is about understanding your own worth so deeply that you stop auditioning for a role that should have been given to you on day one. There's something every woman needs to hear, not as a lecture, not as a lesson pulled from a textbook, but as a truth spoken from a place of real experience and genuine care. A man who wants you will find a way, not sometimes, not when it's convenient, not when his schedule clears up, or when things slow down at work. Always, consistently, without you having to ask twice. Think about the last time you really wanted something. Not needed it casually, but genuinely wanted it. You made time for it. You rearranged things. You figured it out. That's what desire does to a person. It creates movement. It removes obstacles instead of hiding behind them. So when a man tells you he's been too busy to call, too overwhelmed to text back, too caught up in life to check in on you, ask yourself one honest question. Has he been too busy to eat, too overwhelmed to sleep, too caught up to breathe? Because the things we truly prioritize, we never forget to do. A man working double shifts still finds time to watch the game he loves. A man dealing with stress still finds time to talk to his boys. A man who is genuinely exhausted at the end of the day still finds energy for the things that matter most to him. This is not an attack on men. This is simply the truth about human nature. We protect our priorities without even thinking about it. So if you are consistently sitting at the bottom of someone's to-do list, understand that it's not about his schedule. It's about his decision. And he makes that decision every single day without telling you. The dangerous thing that happens to so many good women is that they become lawyers for the very men who are neglecting them. They build the case, gather the evidence, and argue on his behalf to themselves, to their friends, to their mothers who already see what's happening. He's going through a lot right now. He's not good at communication. He shows love differently. And maybe some of that is true. But love, real love, finds a language. It doesn't stay silent for days and call it a personality trait. A man who cares about your heart will feel uncomfortable letting you sit in confusion. That discomfort alone will move him to reach out, to explain, to show up. Silence without accountability is not a communication style. It's a choice. What breaks the heart even more is that most women who wait are not weak. They're loyal, they're patient, they believe in people. They've been told their whole lives that love requires sacrifice, that real relationships take work, that you don't give up on someone just because it gets hard. And all of that is true in the right context. But there is a significant difference between working through a hard season together and working alone while someone watches you struggle from a comfortable distance. Sacrifice should never be one-sided. Work should never be carried by one person. And patience should never become a permanent residence. When a woman keeps excusing a man's unavailability, she doesn't just lose time. She loses herself slowly. She starts adjusting her expectations downward. She starts celebrating the bare minimum as if it's something extraordinary. She starts feeling grateful for a returned phone call like it's a grand romantic gesture. And before she even realizes it, she has rebuilt her entire idea of what she deserves around what he's willing to give. That is one of the quietest and most painful forms of self-abandonment, and it happens with the best of intentions. Here's what nobody talks about honestly enough. When you keep accepting less, you don't inspire a man to give more. You confirm to him that less is enough. Human beings, regardless of gender, will naturally rise to the standard that is set for them or settle at the floor of what is accepted. by waiting, by excusing, by always being available for someone who treats your time like it has no value, you are unknowingly setting the floor. You are showing him exactly how low the bar can go before you finally say something. And some men, not all but some, will live comfortably on that floor for as long as you let them. This is not about becoming cold. It is not about building walls so high that nothing real can get through. It's about understanding that your time is currency. Your attention is valuable. Your emotional energy does not replenish infinitely. Every hour you spend waiting by a phone that isn't ringing is an hour you could have spent building something, growing something, becoming something even more extraordinary than you already are. The right man will not require you to press pause on your life while he figures out whether you're worth his. A man who truly wants you doesn't need a countdown to respond. He doesn't need pressure to prioritize you. He doesn't need to be convinced that your feelings matter. He already knows, he already feels it. And that feeling alone is enough to make him pick up the phone, send the message, show up at the door, not because you manipulated him into it, not because you withheld yourself strategically, but because wanting someone and showing them you want them are not two separate things for a man who is genuinely invested. They are the exact same thing. There is a conversation that needs to happen, and it needs to be honest, gentle, and completely real. Not the kind of honest that tears you down, but the kind that picks you up by the shoulders, looks you directly in the eyes, says what you're doing right now is not serving you. The constant checking, the over-explaining, the always being first to reach out, the shrinking of your own needs so that someone else stays comfortable, that is not love in action. That is fear wearing love's clothing. And until you learn to tell the difference, you will keep confusing the two. Desperation is not always loud. It doesn't always look like crying outside someone's apartment or sending paragraphs at 2 a.m. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it looks like being the first to text every single morning. Sometimes it looks like laughing off behavior that genuinely hurts you because you don't want to seem difficult. Sometimes it looks like rearranging your entire weekend around the possibility that he might want to spend time with you. It looks like availability without boundaries. It looks like presence without standards. And the painful part is that most women doing this don't even recognize it as desperation because it feels from the inside like devotion. But here's what it looks like from the outside. When a woman is always available, always reaching, always the one putting in visible effort, it removes the one thing that creates genuine pursuit, uncertainty. Not manufactured games, not fake distance, but the natural uncertainty that exists when two people are both living full, independent, meaningful lives. A man who has to wonder about you a little, who knows you have options, who senses that your happiness does not depend entirely on his response time. That man is engaged. That man is thinking about you when you're not around. But a man who knows you'll always reach back before he even reaches out has no reason to move toward you because you are already completely there, handed over with no mystery left to explore. This isn't manipulation theory. This is basic human psychology. People assign value to things they have to invest in, not because they're shallow, but because effort creates attachment. When someone works towards something, they protect it differently than something that was simply handed to them without any resistance. A woman who respects her own time, who doesn't cancel her plans on a maybe, who doesn't answer every message within 30 seconds like she was sitting there waiting. That woman creates a natural gravity, not because she's playing hard to get, but because she genuinely has a life that doesn't stop and hold its breath, waiting for a man to decide how he feels. The fear underneath the desperation is almost always the same fear. It's the fear that if you stop chasing, he will forget you. If you stop being so available, he will find someone who is. If you take up too much space with your own needs and standards, he will decide you're too much work and move on. And so you make yourself smaller. You make yourself easier. You make yourself so accommodating that somewhere in the process, the woman he was actually attracted to, that full, alive, opinionated, passionate woman, quietly disappears. And then you wonder why the connection feels hollow. It feels hollow because you hollowed yourself out trying to keep it. Real attraction, the kind that builds something lasting, is never sustained by one person shrinking. It lives in the space between two people who are both whole. A man is not drawn to a woman's desperation, no matter how beautiful she is or how genuine her feelings are. He is drawn to her energy. He is drawn to the way she moves through the world like she belongs in it. He is drawn to the fact that she makes him feel something specifically, not that she is simply always there generically. There is a massive difference between being a constant presence and being an irreplaceable one. So what do you do with this? You start by getting honest with yourself without judgment. Look at your patterns. Look at who reaches first in your current situationship or relationship. Look at how many times you've adjusted your words, your tone, your expectations to protect someone else's comfort at the expense of your own. Look at how many times you felt the urge to follow up a message that was already sent and perfectly clear. That urge is anxiety. And anxiety in a relationship is always communicating something important. Either this person is not giving you enough security, or you have given this person so much power over your emotional state that you've lost your own ground. Getting your ground back doesn't require coldness. It requires fullness. Fill your time with things that genuinely matter to you. Reconnect with the version of yourself that existed before she started organizing her emotions around someone else's inconsistency. Go back to your passions, your friendships, your goals, your laughter. Not as a strategy to win someone back, but as an act of returning to yourself. Because here is the most important truth in all of this. A woman who is genuinely busy becoming the best version of herself doesn't have time to wait by the phone. And that energy, that aliveness, that self-possession is the most attractive thing any woman can carry into any room, into any relationship, into any moment where someone is quietly deciding just how much they value what is standing right in front of them. There is a move so powerful, so deeply misunderstood, and so consistently underestimated by women everywhere that it almost never gets the credit it deserves. It is not a grand gesture. It does not require a speech or a confrontation or a carefully worded message sent at the perfect time. It requires nothing from you at all, and that is exactly what makes it so extraordinary. The move is simply stopping, pulling back, going quiet. Not out of bitterness, not out of strategy, not because someone told you it would make him chase you, but because you finally decided that your peace matters more than his response. Most women have been conditioned to believe that silence is passive, that it means giving up, that choosing not to reach out is the same as not caring. But that thinking has kept so many good women locked in a cycle of over-communicating with people who are underinvesting. The follow-up text that gets sent before the first one is even answered. The explanation offered before anyone asked for one. The clarification of feelings that were already made clear the first time. All of it comes from the same place, a deep discomfort with uncertainty and a belief that if you just say the right thing in the right way at the right moment, something will finally click for him. But here's the reality that nobody wants to say out loud. If it requires that much convincing, the problem was never your words. Silence, genuine silence rooted in self-respect, communicates something that no text message ever could. It says that you know your value without needing to argue for it. It says that your time is not an infinite resource that someone can dip into whenever it suits them. It says that you are not sitting in emotional limbo, waiting for someone to decide whether you're worth the effort. Words can be dismissed. Explanations can be deflected. But a woman who simply stops being available, who withdraws her energy without drama, without announcement, without a farewell performance, that creates a stillness that lands differently. It lands in the chest. It lands in the quiet moments when he reaches for his phone and realizes he hasn't heard from you. And what happens in that stillness is entirely revealing, because a man's response to your silence will tell you everything you needed to know, but were too afraid to find out. Some men will surface immediately, not because you played a game, but because the absence of your energy created a contrast sharp enough to make him feel what he had been taking for granted. When something warm and consistent suddenly goes quiet, the change is noticeable. The space where your good morning messages used to be becomes conspicuous. The absence of your laughter, your check-ins, your patience, it takes up its own kind of room. And a man who genuinely values you will feel that room and move toward filling it. But then there are men who won't surface. Men who will let the silence stretch without discomfort, without curiosity, without any real effort to bridge the distance. And as much as that truth hurts to sit with, it is the most valuable information you could ever receive, because it means the connection you were fighting so hard to preserve was primarily being held together by your effort alone. It means if you had kept reaching, kept explaining, kept making yourself available, things would have continued exactly as they were. Him comfortable, you exhausted. The silence didn't end something real. It revealed something that was already ending on its own while you were too busy trying to save it to notice. The hardest part about going quiet is the internal noise that fills the space immediately after. The second guessing, the wondering if you made the wrong call, the temptation to send just one more message to soften the edges, to make sure he doesn't think you're angry, to leave a door open that he has shown no real intention of walking through. That urge is not love talking. That is the anxious part of you that has confused emotional availability with emotional safety. Real safety doesn't come from keeping someone close at any cost. It comes from knowing that you can stand in your own silence without falling apart. There is something else that happens when a woman truly stops, something that has nothing to do with him at all. She comes back to herself. The mental energy that was being poured into analyzing his behavior, interpreting his tone, wondering what his short response really meant, all of that energy becomes available again. And when a woman reclaims that energy and redirects it toward her own life, something shifts in her that is visible. She stands differently. She speaks differently. She stops explaining herself to people who never asked for an explanation, because she no longer feels the need to justify her own worth. Your silence is not punishment. It is not a weapon, and it is not a wall. It is a boundary dressed in dignity. It is the moment you decide that your emotional energy is sacred enough to protect. It is the clearest possible signal that you understand something most people spend years learning, that you cannot pour endlessly into something that does not pour back and call that love. You can only call it loss. And the woman who finally goes quiet is not giving up on love. She is giving up on the version of it that was slowly giving up on her. That is not weakness. That is the beginning of everything that actually deserves her. There comes a point in every woman's journey where she gets tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that settles deep in the bones after months or years of trying to decode someone, of wondering where she stands, of reading between lines that should have never been written in the first place. That kind of tired is actually a gift, even though it never feels like one in the moment, because that exhaustion is the moment the soul stops accepting confusion as a substitute for clarity. It is the moment a woman begins to understand, at a level deeper than logic, that love was never supposed to feel this uncertain. The right man will not make you wonder. That sentence sounds simple, but carry it with you for a moment and let it land fully. Think about how much mental and emotional real estate has been occupied by the question of where things stand with someone. Think about how many conversations you have replayed in your mind trying to find the hidden meaning. Think about how many times you convinced yourself that the mixed signals were just his way of showing love, that his inconsistency was just a phase, that if you stayed patient long enough, the confusion would eventually resolve itself into something solid. That is not love asking you to be patient. That is uncertainty asking you to normalize it. Real love has a clarity to it that is almost disarming when you first encounter it after a long season of confusion. It doesn't speak in riddles. It doesn't keep you oscillating between feeling chosen and feeling invisible depending on his mood that day. It doesn't make you feel electric on the weekends and forgotten by Wednesday. When a man is genuinely invested in a woman, his behavior is not a puzzle she needs to solve. His actions and his words move in the same direction. He doesn't say he cares and then disappear for days. He doesn't make her feel like the most important person in the room and then treat her like background noise when something more interesting comes along. Consistency is not a high bar. It is the baseline of what real love looks like in practice. What keeps so many women trapped in the cycle of wondering is a deeply rooted belief that love is supposed to be hard. That if it comes easily, if it feels peaceful, if a man's intentions are obvious and his actions are steady, then something must be missing. The butterflies aren't there. The tension isn't there. The push and pull that they've mistaken for passion is absent. But what they are actually missing is not passion. It is anxiety. And anxiety was never supposed to be the foundation of a relationship. The nervous excitement of not knowing where you stand is not chemistry. It is your nervous system responding to inconsistency. The peace that comes with someone who is clear about wanting you is not boring. It is what safe love actually feels like. And most women have simply never been given the chance to experience it long enough to trust it. The man who is right for you will not require you to manage his feelings about you. You will not have to strategically time your responses to keep him interested. You will not have to dim your personality to avoid overwhelming him or amplify parts of yourself that don't feel natural just to keep his attention. You will simply be yourself, fully and without apology, and that will be enough. Not because you got lucky, not because you finally said the right thing at the right moment, but because the right man will see exactly who you are and decide without pressure or persuasion that you are precisely what he wants. Stop measuring your worth by who calls back. That is one of the most important shifts a woman can make in how she moves through love and relationships. Because every time you sit by a phone waiting for validation, you are placing the definition of your value in someone else's hands. You are essentially saying that your worth is conditional, that it rises when he responds and falls when he doesn't. But your worth was never his to assign. It existed before he arrived, and it will remain completely intact regardless of what he decides. The woman who understands this does not wait desperately for a callback because she is not waiting for someone to confirm what she already knows about herself. What you deserve is not a complicated request. You deserve someone whose yes sounds like yes and whose actions follow without prompting. You deserve someone who thinks about you when you're not in the room and tells you so without needing a reason. You deserve someone who makes room for your feelings instead of making you feel like your feelings are an inconvenience. You deserve Tuesday love, not just the grand gestures that show up when guilt or distance finally gets loud enough, but the ordinary, steady, unglamorous showing up that happens on regular days for no reason other than the fact that he genuinely wants you in his life. So let this be the moment you raise the standard, not out of pride and not out of pain, but out of a clear-eyed understanding of what you bring to the table and what you are no longer willing to accept in return. The right love will not make you question your sanity. It will not make you feel like too much or not enough on the same afternoon. It will not keep you in a waiting room indefinitely. It will walk through the door, see you clearly, and stay. Not because you made yourself impossible to leave, but because it simply never wanted to go.